with ESPN, the WNBA has taken off the past few years, but it's weird to see it this year. It feels like a lot of black women in the league have been criticized. Has that been a downer? You know, the ESPN shills setting her up to cry about race and victim, but that's what they do at ESPN. We're not surprised. It really has, in my sense, because it feels like it's not like we're timid, but it's like you don't want us to do stuff. I threw in that because that's how you just don't want to hear the noise. It strips us from the genuine and pureness and love of the game. Just like, I don't even want to go down this road. I know it's going to be some idiotic person that's going to talk crazy, and then I have to continue to take the high road, aka...
A'ja Wilson just said that out loud, on camera, to ESPN. The two-time MVP, the face of the Las Vegas Aces, openly admitting that being a black woman in the WNBA right now feels like you're being silenced, that the love of the game is being stripped away. And if you think that's just talk, we need to show you what happened at a Miami Heat game that's now gone absolutely viral. Picture this: A'ja Wilson sitting courtside at FTX Arena. She's there to support Bam Adebayo. Her training partner, 2 seats away, there's a kid, maybe 12 years old, wearing a Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever jersey, number 22. The cameras catch the moment A'ja turns her head to look in his direction, and watch what happens next. The kid immediately turns his head the opposite way. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. And it perfectly captures the strangest dynamic in professional basketball right now. You were onto something when you noticed this tension months ago. The WNBA exploded in 2024, but the growth didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a war. And A'ja Wilson just became the face of one side of that war. If you believe the story behind the story matters, if you think we need to understand what's really happening in women's basketball right now, smash that like button, because this goes way deeper than one awkward moment at a basketball game. Let's filter out the noise and talk about what actually happened here. That Heat game moment didn't appear out of nowhere. It's the physical manifestation of something A'ja said in a September ESPN interview that lit social media on fire. She told the reporter she dreaded being in Indiana during the WNBA season, not because of the city, but because she was worried about confrontations with Caitlin Clark fans. Think about that for a second. The reigning WNBA MVP openly admitting she's uncomfortable visiting another team's arena because of their fan base. That's not normal. LeBron James never gave interviews about dreading Cleveland. Kevin Durant never complained about feeling unsafe in Golden State. Professional athletes don't usually position themselves as victims of other players' popularity, but A'ja did. She told ESPN, quote, "I just don't want no shit to pop off." She's talking about Indiana. She's talking about Caitlin Clark's fans. She's positioning herself as someone who needs to be protected from them, someone who needs to take the high road constantly, someone who's exhausted by the whole situation. And here's where it gets complicated, because A'ja Wilson isn't completely wrong about the WNBA's explosion creating tension. The league saw record numbers in 2024. Multiple games exceeded 2 million viewers for the first time in history. Caitlin Clark's rookie season drove attendance up 48% league-wide. The Indiana Fever went from averaging 4,000 fans per game to over 17,000. Those are unprecedented numbers. What A'ja is struggling with is that this growth didn't center around her. And when you've been the face of the league for years, when you've won back-to-back championships, when you've been named MVP twice, and suddenly a rookie is getting 10 times the media coverage you ever received, that creates resentment. Even if you don't want to admit it, the ESPN interview reveals exactly how A'ja frames this situation. She says it feels like a lot of black women in the league have been criticized, that the attention on Caitlin Clark strips us from the genuine and pureness and love of the game. She's making this about race. She's making this about being silenced. She's positioning herself as a victim of Caitlin Clark's success. But connecting the dots reveals something more nuanced. Nobody is criticizing A'ja Wilson for being good at basketball. Nobody is saying she doesn't deserve recognition. What people are reacting to is the victim mentality itself. The idea that Caitlin Clark's popularity is somehow an attack on other players in the league. In the interview, Aja describes the entire WNBA season as exhausting. Quote, It's just like damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you constantly have to live in that life for 4 months. 4 months. That's the WNBA season. She's saying that for the entire season, she felt like she was walking on eggshells, unable to be herself, forced to be mature and take the high road because otherwise some person online is going to criticize her. This is a professional athlete who makes over $200,000 from her WNBA salary alone, plus millions more in endorsements, talking about how difficult it is to deal with criticism on social media. Welcome to professional sports. That's the deal. You get the fame, the money, the platform, and yes, you also get people on Twitter saying things you don't like. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. The WNBA's growth should be celebrated by everyone in the league. Rising tides lift all boats. Instead, some of the league's biggest stars are giving interviews where they position themselves as victims of that growth, where they talk about dreading certain arenas, where they make it about everything except what it actually is: basketball. Now let's go back to that Heat game moment, because what's really happening here is that Aja Wilson has created a narrative in her head where Caitlin Clark fans are dangerous, where Indiana is hostile territory, where she needs to be on guard constantly. And then she sits down at a basketball game, 2 seats away from a kid wearing a Caitlin Clark jersey, and that entire narrative plays out in her body language. The kid isn't doing anything wrong. He's not saying anything to her. He's not confronting her. He's just a 12-year-old basketball fan wearing his favorite player's jersey. But Aja looks over, and you can see the moment register. That's a Caitlin Clark jersey. That represents everything she's been complaining about, and the kid, sensing the awkwardness, turns his head away. This moment is now being shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media. Caitlin Clark fans are turning it into a meme. We see you when you're sleeping. We know when you're awake. They're treating it like a joke. And Aja is losing this narrative battle because she chose to fight it in the first place. Reading between the lines of that ESPN interview reveals something Aja probably didn't intend to communicate. She says, quote, "It doesn't matter what we all do as black women. We're still going to be swept underneath the rug. That's why it boils my blood when people say it's not about race. Because it is." She's looking at the WNBA's explosion in popularity and interpreting it through a racial lens. But that's not why fans gravitate toward Caitlin Clark. They gravitate toward her because she's exciting to watch, because she shoots from 30 feet, because she had one of the greatest college basketball careers in history, because she plays with a chip on her shoulder, because she brought Iowa to back-to-back national championship games. Race isn't the reason people buy her jerseys. Performance and entertainment value are the reasons. And here's where I need you to weigh in. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Aja Wilson has a point about racial dynamics in the WNBA's popularity? Or is this about something else entirely? Because this conversation is happening whether the league wants it or not, and your perspective matters.
That's something that I've really seen this year that I've never seen before. It's just like damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you constantly have to live in that life for 4 months. It doesn't matter what we all do as black women. We're still going to be swept underneath the rug. That's why it boils my blood when people say it's not about race, because it is. Now, the funniest part about this, and I'm sure this is a coincidence, is how as soon as Aja Wilson starts turning her head, the guy, the kid, starts turning.
Let's be clear about the facts. Aja Wilson averaged 27 points per game in the 2024 season. She won her second consecutive MVP award. She led the Aces to the playoffs. She's one of the most dominant players in WNBA history. And yet, she's sitting at a basketball game feeling insecure because a fan is wearing someone else's jersey. That's not about race. That's about ego. The comment about dreading Indiana is particularly damaging because it reinforces negative stereotypes about WNBA players. It makes them look petty. It makes them look ungrateful. It makes them look like they can't handle the pressure that comes with mainstream attention. And it gives ammunition to people who already don't take women's basketball seriously. When LeBron James was the most popular player in the NBA, did Kevin Durant give interviews about how he dreaded going to Cleveland because LeBron's fans might confront him? When Tom Brady was the biggest star in the NFL, did Aaron Rodgers complain about feeling unsafe in New England? No. Because professional athletes understand that popularity isn't distributed evenly, and complaining about it makes you look weak. The social media response to that Heat game video tells you everything you need to know about how this is playing publicly. Caitlin Clark fans aren't intimidated by Aja's victim narrative. They're amused by it. They're turning it into a joke. They're treating this like a game, and Aja is losing because she chose to make it adversarial in the first place. What's particularly unfortunate is that this didn't have to be a war. Aja Wilson and Caitlin Clark could have had a mutually beneficial relationship. Aja could have positioned herself as the established veteran, welcoming the exciting rookie. She could have done joint interviews, joint appearances, joint endorsements. She could have said things like, "The rising tide lifts all boats. I'm excited about where women's basketball is headed." Instead, she gave an interview where she said she dreads visiting Indiana and worries about confrontations with fans. She positioned herself as a victim of the league's growth, and that Heat game moment is the physical manifestation of the narrative she created. She sees a Caitlin Clark jersey and it bothers her, not because the fan did anything wrong, not because anyone said anything to her, but because that jersey represents everything she's been complaining about. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. Aja Wilson is sitting courtside at an NBA game. She's there to support Bam Adebayo, who she trains with in the off-season. She's in a good mood, enjoying the game. And then she sees that number 22 jersey, and you can see her demeanor change. That's not a healthy relationship with the sport. That's not a healthy relationship with your own league. The Bam Adebayo connection makes this even more interesting. Aja trains with Bam in the off-season. She said publicly that she teaches him post moves, that she helps him with his footwork. There's mutual respect there. And Bam is one of the most popular players in the NBA, beloved by Heat fans, respected across the league. He doesn't complain about other players being more popular than him. He doesn't give interviews about feeling persecuted. He just plays basketball and lets his game speak for itself. That's the approach Aja should have taken. Let your game speak for itself. You're a two-time MVP, you're a champion, you're one of the best players in the world. You don't need to complain about Caitlin Clark's popularity. You don't need to frame yourself as a victim. You don't need to dread visiting Indiana. Just play basketball, be gracious in interviews, and let the results speak for themselves. Instead, we're at a point where Aja Wilson sitting next to a Caitlin Clark fan at a basketball game becomes a viral moment, where people are analyzing her body language, her facial expressions, her reaction to seeing that jersey, where the narrative around her has shifted from dominant MVP to player who can't handle Caitlin Clark's popularity. That's a massive self-inflicted wound. So the question becomes, where does this go from here? Because the WNBA season is going to start again in a few months, Caitlin Clark is still going to be the most popular player in the league. Fans are still going to wear her jersey to every arena. And Aja Wilson is going to have to figure out how to deal with that reality without positioning herself as a victim every time it happens. The smart move would be to change the narrative. Do an interview where you acknowledge that Caitlin Clark has been great for the league. Compliment her game. Talk about how exciting it is to have sold-out arenas and record ratings. Show some graciousness. Show some maturity. Show that you can handle being the second most popular player in the league without making it a racial grievance. But based on that ESPN interview, based on that body language at the Heat game, based on everything we've seen from A'ja Wilson over the past year, that's probably not going to happen. She's dug into this victim narrative. She's committed to the idea that Caitlin Clark's success is somehow unfair to her. And as long as she maintains that position, moments like the Heat game are going to keep happening. She's going to keep seeing Caitlin Clark jerseys everywhere she goes. And it's going to keep bothering her. Because here's the reality. Caitlin Clark isn't going anywhere. Her fans aren't going anywhere. The attention isn't going to shift back to A'ja Wilson just because she complains about it in ESPN interviews. The only thing that's going to change is how people perceive her. And right now, that perception is shifting from dominant champion to player who can't handle someone else being more popular. That Heat game moment is going to follow her. That awkward head turn, that visible discomfort at seeing a Caitlin Clark jersey, that's now part of her story. And every time she plays against Indiana, every time she's in the same arena as Caitlin Clark, people are going to be watching to see how she reacts. They're going to be looking for signs of that same insecurity, that same resentment, that same inability to just let it go and focus on basketball. And that's the tragedy here, because A'ja Wilson is an incredible player. She deserves respect. She deserves recognition. But she's letting this consume her in a way that's damaging her legacy. If this analysis helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes in the WNBA, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're tracking every development in this story because it's not going away. Next video, we're breaking down how Caitlin Clark herself is responding to all of this. And trust me, her approach is completely different. You'll want to see that. What do you think? Is A'ja Wilson justified in how she feels? Or is this a case of an established star who can't handle not being the center of attention anymore? Drop your thoughts below. And remember, we're not here to pick sides. We're here to understand the dynamics that are reshaping women's basketball. Thanks for watching.